Well, good day, my friends. Another day, another video. Today, not so hot as it has been last couple of days. Tomorrow's going to be hot again, I think. So today I'm going to talk about the funnest read and most enjoyable read I've had in a little while. And sometimes these things come from unexpected sources. I'm talking about Paul Murray Kendall's biography of Louis the XI. Now, when I was on vacation, I found this book on my brother's bookshelf. I've seen it for a couple of years, and then finally decided to see how interesting it'd be and what the significance of Louis the XI is. So, going through school, high school, and the general trajectory of modern history courses, you talk about Louis 13th to 16th. Uh, well, I suppose you start with Henry the Fourth, but not much before that. I never took a really late medieval politics course, but so this Louis the XI was unknown to me. So you quickly figure out though that you don't quickly because it's quite a long story. Basically, it's all about the contest between the King of France and the Duke of Burgundy. Now, in the Middle Ages, France was not a unified country. You have Louis the XI to thank for that. Louis the XI and centralizing tendencies after that, culminating, of course, with Louis the XIV in the 18th century. And in the Middle Ages, of course, feudalism meant that power was shared at different levels. So there was no absolute monarchs in the Middle Ages, barring a few very small kingdoms, of course. Uh, Monarchs were very much dependent on the hierarchical structure of the feudal system, which meant that power was shared at each level, and there was responsibilities and duties and rights on all the different levels. So, for instance, there'd be various dukes and counts that had responsibilities to send men to fight in the king's army, and then below that, there were lower nobility were responsible to send men to fight for the armies of these lower people, these dukes and counts, and on down through the system, at the bottom of which was the peasant who worked the lands of the nobility and owed them a certain amount of labor or a certain amount of products of their farms, and in exchange, these dukes and counts and all these people uh, were supposed to protect the peasants from outside violence. And in fact, the system did work. They did do their best to protect the people in the Middle Ages. With the expansion of gunpowder and all that, the system changed because castles become less impregnable when you've got cannons and so on, and government became more centralized. So the chance that the aristocrat from the neighboring town invading your little village became less and less likely. So that's the breakdown of the medieval system. But you can see, of course, that with the fall of the centralized Roman Empire, what's going to fill the vacuum was all these local potentates, these local magnates who arranged things with the peasantry, that the peasants would give them their crops and stuff in exchange for protection. And the protection was just as often from other, say in France, other French people, as it was from, say, external sources like Vikings or Hungarians, Magyars, and all that. So that system lasted for a good 1,000 years, and it was people like Louis the XI who finally, his lifelong political endeavors, was to crush the Duke of Burgundy. The Duke of Burgundy was practically as powerful, sometimes more powerful, than the King of France himself. And although the Duke of Burgundy was lower than him in the feudal scale, in effect, he was wealthier and often more powerful than the king himself. And these things happen because of marriage alliances and or successful military campaigns. So in the Middle Ages, from say the death of Charlemagne on to Louis XI, you have France as is not a united country. And the France that Louis XI inherited was not only broken up into these powerful subunits, but it was in the midst of, or I should say, in the later phase of the Hundred Years' War with England. And now the reason, in a nutshell, for the Hundred Years' War was that the King of England claimed to be the King of France as well, and he had a pretty good sort of dynastic claim because, as you remember, the King of England was originally the Duke of Normandy in France. So we're talking about William the Conqueror. And through marriage and all that stuff, he had a pretty strong claim to the royal title in France. So the Duke of Burgundy and the King of England would often team up against the King of France. And so the whole thing with Joan of Arc occurred under his father, Louis XI's father, and probably Louis XI did meet her. And the funny thing is, there, Joan of Arc set off a bit of a reversal of fortune for France, but not really much of one. I think it's exaggerated in the hands of church historians or whatever, but it doesn't the whole history of Joan of Arc doesn't play too prominent a role in Kendall's study of Louis XI. Um, this study is very interesting. This biography is very interesting because of I think because of the analysis of Louis XI's character, and he was not he was less a warrior than he was a strategist. Um, he learned very quickly how to be a little bit subtler and patient in his dealings with, for instance, the Duke of Burgundy or the Counts of Brittany and wherever. Um, and in the end, Louis XI integrated the Duchy of Burgundy into his kingdom, and he became the lord of that place as well in an absolute sense because of the alliances he made with external powers. So in this case, he had a long relationship with the Swiss. So in all his power and arrogance, um, Charles, the Duke of Burgundy, invaded Switzerland. The Swiss just utterly annihilated him, so much so that he could not reverse his fortune. His army was totally destroyed. And to hand it to the Duke of Burgundy, he did die with his soldiers in a battle soon after the Swiss debacle. So Louis XI could then sweep in and take the duchy, and basically, you have most of modern France at that point because the Duchy of Burgundy was so huge. It was basically the whole eastern half of France at the time. So basically, from a bit further over from Paris down. So from basically way up in the Netherlands down to Switzerland, that part of the kingdom. So this is a super interesting biography because of the unique character of Louis XI, I think, and the way that Kendall is able to tell his story. And I think that for me as well, is interesting because, well, I didn't know all that much about the formation of the modern Kingdom of France. Again, I studied Carolingian history, so the time of Charlemagne and so on. And not too much after that until you get to whatever Henry the Fourth and onto uh, the Louis 13 up. So to me, it was super interesting. You'll learn a lot about life at the time in terms of, well, I should say, the noble life, the structure of politics in the world at the time. There's a lot of history of England in this because of how important the relationship was, for instance, between the Duke of Burgundy and the King of England. So not only in England are we dealing with the Hundred Years' War, we're also dealing with the War of the Roses. So between the two uh, rival claimants to the, the throne of England, and that Louis the 11th himself, he much of his success on the mainland came from his ability to kind of keep England out of it, and he was able to do that basically by paying England off. He gave them a huge sum of money every year, and kept them out from helping basically the Duke of Burgundy. So to reverse that whole history uh, with of competing powers on in mainland France, basically. So if you want to learn something about the politics of the 14th and 15th centuries, a little bit about English and French history and society. It's a very cool book, and I had a lot of fun reading it. Funnest read I had in a little while. So thanks, guys. Hope you're all doing well. 100th subscriber special coming soon, I promise. I'm already geared up, but I just have to find the time and the energy to make the video. So anyway, thanks, guys. Hope you're all doing well, and keep cool. Okay, bye now.